I can't believe I did that. What was I thinking? We've all had those moments. Sometimes it's pretty totally unintended in just a oops, or whatever. We've all been there. Like, what was I thinking? How did I do this? I can't believe. Okay. The 11 in the Galilee gathering, they didn't go, they didn't get there. But there's a reason why they didn't get there, because they had one of those moments where, looking back at it, they go, oh, how could I have been so doofy? Okay? They had one of those moments. I found that in the Word back in 2010. And I go, really? Really? This is what happened? It took me a few years. It took me 6 months to actually go, yeah, it really happened. And then it took me a few years to understand some of the ramifications of it. And what had happened was, this is recorded in the end of Matthew and the end of Mark, where Jesus comes to him, and this is the night Judas would betray him, and he says, and he's trying to prep them for what's coming, okay? So he says, he brings to their remembrance a scripture where he says, where it's recorded, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered abroad. Oh. And what was the result of that? That we all know about. Peter and his, not so, Lord, that'll never happen. And Jesus, rather than being able to continue with his go to Galilee statements, he said, the rooster ain't gonna crow until you've denied me 3 times. And Peter comes back with a, not so, Lord, that'll never happen. And then what you find is the rest of them, and it's recorded there, that they joined in with Peter. We'll never do that. We'll never scatter. We'll fight to the death. Well, that set in motion some stuff. For them, what happened right off the bat is, later that evening, it's recorded the places where Peter denied Jesus 3 times. The last one was to a servant girl, a slave. And he even, before her, he crumbled. All right? So, those guys go and hide. And they're afraid, and understandably so. And looking back at this, I understand absolutely how it happened. How I easily myself, oh, me too, I could have been caught up with the same thing easy. But the prophecy that they were in God's face about, where it's this is God the Father speaking, I will smite the shepherd. I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered abroad. And they looked at it and go, we ain't gonna scatter, no way. Well, immediately as a result of that, okay, Peter denied him 3 times. They went and hid. Jesus was crucified. They were still hiding. 3 days later, they were still hiding. Morning of the first day of the week, where Mary Magdalene and other Mary and other women went out to the tomb to put not the embalming, but the spices and stuff, and to take care of that. They went out there to do that, brought stuff with them. They get out there, the stones rolled away, and an angel tells them, what are you doing looking for the living among the dead? Those kind of statements. And then Mary gets a directive from one of the angels to go and tell the disciples that he goes before you into Galilee, and there shall you see him. Now, there's a total of 5 statements like that in Matthew and Mark, 5 different ones. This one was delivered by an angel to Mary to deliver to the disciples. She went to the 11 that were hiding in a building with no windows, locked in there, and she tells them that he's risen from the dead. They didn't believe her. She apparently didn't deliver the second half of the message, that he goes before us into Galilee and there shall we see him. But she did deliver he's risen and I've seen him, and they didn't believe her. Okay. She went on to tell others, of whom she told, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, to go to Galilee. Her and that message continued on because Jesus had delivered the message. I'm going to die, going to be crucified on the cross, going to be raised again the third day. And I will go before you into Galilee, but when I am risen, I will go before you into Galilee, and there shall you see me. Okay, that had been delivered by Jesus all over the place. That's obvious, because he would say, as I told you, as I said unto you about this. Anyhow, so they went and hid. And then you find, after 8 days, now John records this, okay, because, okay, Matthew and Mark did not lie at all in what they recorded, but they didn't want to identify I can't believe I did that, the moment that they had. So Matthew records that they went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had appointed them. And then he goes on to say, and then they ate with them and stuff, and okay, and then Mark records more of the tongue lashing that they got from Jesus about going to all the world, okay, that statement. But see, now the timeline, you got to go to John and read the Gospel of John to actually get the timeline of these happenings, because this is really important. Today, it's really important. So, John records, and when you read the Gospel of John, when you get to the last chapter, it seems like he's concluding his record. He's concluding his statements. And he talks about, okay, evening of the first day that they saw him, that they saw Jesus. Thomas wasn't there. Then the next time, Thomas was there. And it's the hands and show me the scar in the side, the wound in the side, and the nail holes in the hands. And so Thomas was there the second time. But John identifies that is 8 days later. Okay, after 8 days. 8 days later. And the Galilee gathering happened starting probably the second day after the resurrection. Now, 8 days later, they, the 11, and those that were with them, because there was others with them, like Cleopas and some others. Cleopas is the one on the road to Emmaus, and the other that was with him. So, 8 days later, they're still in the same place. Then, John, I think he sees what Matthew and Mark wrote. Can't prove this, but I think he sees that, and he adds one more chapter. We call it a chapter. He adds one more statement to his record. And that identifies he identifies the third time that the 11 saw Jesus, and there is only 3 times recorded where the 12, the 11, the 12, that those guys saw Jesus after the resurrection. 3 times, that's all, in all of Scripture. But Luke identifies those that came with him from Galilee up to Jerusalem, that he showed himself alive with many infallible proofs for 40 days. That was a different group. That was the Galilee gathering people that went to Galilee to see him after he was raised from the dead. Somewhere around 2,000 people. 2,000, because it was 500 adult males plus all the women and kids. There was a lot that was there. So John identifies the third time in the last chapter of John, where they're out in the boat, and have you caught any fish? No. Throw the net on the other side, drag in 153 great fish, big ones, bring it to shore. Peter jumps in the water, swims to shore. He puts his coat on because he was naked, mostly naked, I think. Anyhow, puts his coat on, jumps in the water, swims to shore. They were about 300 feet out from shore, 100 yards. And then you have the shore lunch, and now this is another that's really unique, that if you don't know about the Galilee gathering, none of this makes sense. So at the shore lunch, and Jesus does the food and the stuff, and there's 153 great fish and a great big pile of fish. And that's somewhere around 600 pounds, okay, of fish for the type of fish that was in that lake. So Jesus looks into Peter, do you love me? And Peter responds with, oh, Lord, do you know I'm your friend? Because they use two different words. Jesus is using agape and Peter's using phileo, friend. And then Jesus does the feed my sheep. Do you love me more than these? Feed my sheep. Do you love me more than these? Peter, do you even like me? Am I even your friend? Oh, Lord, you know I'm your friend. And Jesus keeps referring to the feed my sheep. Well, there was 2,000 or more people with him that was at the Galilee gathering. And if you notice, when you read that, when you look, there was, when the boat came to shore with the 7 guys in it, because all 11 went to Galilee, only 7 got into the boat, apparently, to go fishing. But you have fish on the fire at that time, and food ready to eat when Peter gets to shore. And he says, feed my sheep. Well, okay, Peter, are you going to sell all of these fish and make money off of it? Or are you going to take part in the shore lunch here, and we'll cook up the rest of the fish for these 2,000 plus people that are sitting here? And Peter, do you love me more than these people that showed up for the Galilee gathering? Huh, Peter? These people that showed up, you weren't there, Peter, but you love me more than all of these that showed up for it? Really? Mr. Awesome Guy? So that's what Peter was confronted with. And then they also get, at that time, as Mark records, the royal dressing down, where he upbraided them for their hardness of heart and unbelief, and justifiably so. They had it coming. They had all sorts of witnesses, eyewitnesses in front of them. First time, second time, Mary Magdalene, Cleopas on the road to Emmaus, all of these eyewitnesses, and they refused to believe them. Anyhow, they didn't believe him. They got a royal dressing down from Jesus. And he told them to go to Jerusalem. Tarry in Jerusalem until you're endued with power from on high. Tarry in Jerusalem. Well, those good old boys had missed it so bad that the next time they went, okay, so they go with them, with the ones that were at the Galilee gathering, they go with them up to Jerusalem, and then they camp out in Jerusalem. But you find when 40 days later, as he showed himself alive with many infallible proofs to the people that came with him from Galilee, the ones that had gone to the meeting like they were supposed to, that he's shown himself alive to them. Some of them probably saw him hundreds of times over the course of 40 days. And then he takes them out. Now this is Luke. If you go and read in Luke, the last chapter of Luke, last page of Luke, last chapter, covers at least 43 days on one page. It's really a challenge to go through it and where you can mark time-wise, because he's covering 43 days. So they, the 11, because Judas is dead, they stay in the upper room. We find them in the upper room. And Jesus leads others out of Jerusalem Because the others, they were going to stay, the 12, they're going to 11, they're going to stay in Jerusalem until they're endued with power from on high. So Jesus leads others out as far as to Bethany, and then he leaves the planet. Whoop, and then the two angels stand next to him, come and arise and go, you men of Galilee, you Galilee gathering men, you people from Galilee gathering, why do you stand gazing up into heaven? The same Jesus, as you've seen him leave, he's going to return like that. At some point in time. I think that's at least 1,000 years away, the way Revelation reads it. Anyhow, so this is my best so far condensed version, showing and expressing, and from scripture stuff, how the 11, they missed the Galilee gathering. They weren't there. That's obvious. John makes that overwhelmingly obvious. Luke, I think he does a really good job of presenting that they missed the ascension also. Because those that went out as far as to Bethany says that they came back to Jerusalem, and what went up into the upper room where abode the 11 plus others there that were with him. That abode, they were there. They came back to Jerusalem, up to the upper room, to let them know Jesus has left the planet. Bring them up to speed on some stuff. And that's where they found, because they knew they were there. They camped out there. They were staying there until the day of Pentecost, but for them it was the celebration of the giving of the law. That was day was coming. One of the 3 annual pilgrimages to Jerusalem, where there was people coming from all over the world. Now that brings into the largest, the most orchestrated event of all time, where Spirit Helper is drawing people from all over the world to come in for the celebration of the giving of the law, and the people at the Galilee gathering present to them the gospel, and they've gotten the prophetic history record that Jesus had presented to them, similar to what he delivered to the 2 on the road to Emmaus. The Galilee gathering got that. The Galilee gathering people got that over the course of several days, where he could go into great detail about his fulfillment of the 300 plus prophecies about him walking on this earth. Okay, that's the condensed version. Okay? It's an awesome journey. Enjoy the journey.